This is Giving the Game Away, the podcast where we uncover lesser spoken about topics from the world of sport by interviewing elite athletes, psychologists, agents, broadcasters and more. And coming up on today's episode.
And then he sort of got straight into it. He said, listen, right, this is how the business works. And he pulled out $15,000 US cash and just sat it on the table and said, right, that's our down payment and we deal in cash and what we do is we bet inside games. It was pretty straightforward. As an opening batsman, I was just asked to score, between 10 and 15 runs off 20 balls and get out. That's it. Job done. $50,000 US in some random account in Dubai. All yours, no worries. Once you're there, you're always living with a noose around your neck waiting to be bribed, and there was always subtle conversations about your children and where you lived and things that they knew about you that you didn't even know.
Today, we're bringing you one of the most detailed interviews yet about the world of match fixing and corruption in professional sport. And we're lucky to have Lou Vincent on to give a detailed explanation of how he was roped into this world, what he was made to do, and how after a while, it was a side to his life that became completely inescapable. For those that don't know, Lou Vincent was an international cricketer for New Zealand and at one point one of the best players in the world. But as we'll hear about over the next hour, Lou's career came to an abrupt end when he got caught up in this world of match fixing, corruption and crime.
One of the main reasons we do these podcasts is to try and shine a light on areas of sport that aren't often talked about. And that's why we're so excited about this episode, because rarely do you get to hear about match fixing from someone who themselves has received 11 life bans for fixing cricket matches. And today's episode will uncover how Lou Vincent actually got lured into the world of match fixing, what exactly he was asked to do by the corrupt fixers, and how they kept him involved through intimidation and fear. Something else we try and highlight in our podcasts is how athletes can turn setbacks into opportunities. And what's great about Lou's story and journey is that while he acknowledges that what he did was completely inexcusable, he is now attempting to turn that negative period of his life into a positive by educating young sports people about the dangers of corruption and match fixing. And he hopes that his experiences can help to ensure that no one else gets tangled up in the same mess he was. If you enjoy this episode, please do leave us a review or a comment on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out our YouTube, Twitter and Instagram pages for more content.
Lou, what a pleasure to be chatting to you today. And I'm so glad we finally got a date in. Both been wanting to do this for a while, and we've obviously been back and forth over emails and WhatsApps over the last few months, so it's so good to finally be chatting to you today. Something you sent me recently was a load of fans at Seedham Park, all wearing Lou Vincent shirts whilst watching the test match, and something that must feel good after your well-known absence from the game to be back as part of the cricket community again and having a positive effect on it all.
Oh, it's lovely. It's when cricket's been a part of your life since you're 4 years old, and what am I now? Geez, I'm almost 44. It's hard to ignore all the journey that the game has taken you on, and yeah, certainly towards the end of my career when it went pretty south and pretty sour, and going through all the court cases and high-profile media barrage and getting hit with 11 life bans, it was very easy for me just to turn away from cricket for a few years, and it's been probably 6-7 years been out of the game. And it's funny what sort of pops up, after the dust settles and life moves on. Cricket sort of popped back into my mind last year when I moved down to Raglan, and just watching the young kids sort of at the beach, and I was like, yeah, beach cricket's fun. And then all of a sudden other kids started joining in, and then all of a sudden one thing led to the other, to the point where last week when the test match was on, the first test match between New Zealand and the West Indies, and all the kids I've been coaching, they all wanted to wear my old professional shirts from around the world, and they all went to the game wearing my shirts as a bit of a moral support to try and help me in the future overturn my ban. So it's cricket's on a high in Raglan, and it's lovely to be the instigator to it, and it feels right. So no, thank you. It's good to be here talking to you guys, and also well done with the topics that you've been covering. I've heard a couple of your podcasts and really like what you guys are bringing to the sporting community. So keep up your good work as well.
Appreciate the kind words, Lou, and yeah, it's been great to see you back involved with cricket, and lovely to see that picture you sent through, as you say, of all the kids wearing your old jerseys, and that must have just brought back some lovely memories of your time playing for New Zealand. That must have been a great experience, your career playing for your international side.
Oh, immensely proud of what I've achieved in cricket, but that photo represented to me what it's about, and it's about the future growth of the game, and it brought back memories of me being a little kid, jumping the fence and going to the cricket and trying to get as many autographs as possible, and just seeing the excitement in the kids' faces, just there watching and seeing, the TV cameras recording the game, and just the intensity of that top level, and the excitement of being at a field with the sun shining and getting hot chips and a can of Coke and playing cricket on the bank. That's what it's about, is bringing fun and excitement into any sport, and that's what sort of fills my heart, seeing kids sort of wanting to get outside and be active.
Definitely. And how, going back to your Test career, and obviously you scored 100 on Test debut, how did that feel to, you getting thrown in straight into Test cricket in Perth against Australia? Obviously they were the best side in the world at that point. How did it feel to score 100 on Test debut?
Oh man, it was amazing, because I was just a young guy, 21-year-old on tour. I was the gopher, the water boy, where's the chewing gum, Lou, go carry my bags, the last one into the change room sort of thing. But I always remember that time in my life being like, this is awesome. It's like I'm in my own little movie, and I get to sort of like play it out, and there's that famous person and that famous person, and then the last game of the tour, it's like Matthew Bell was struggling for form, who had an incredible season, but failed against Australia, and they said, hey Lou, do you want to play tomorrow? And if you do, you're going to be opening the batting against against McGrath and Lee and Gillespie and Warne at the Wacker. And I was like, oh yeah, that's just like, bring it on. And I wasn't of course I was nervous. I was absolutely nervous, because you're just like, wow, this is it. There's no fantasy anymore. It's you walking out to battle against the best in the world. And I couldn't have worked out better. Winning the toss, batting, sun shining at the Wacker, and all the Aussies in the media saying it's going to be too fast, too bouncy for the Kiwis, and whatever it was, 500 runs later, four of us got hundreds. It was an incredible first innings, and I guess I raised my bat first with 100, and I guess the other guys thought, well, if Luke can get 100, it must be pretty easy, so let's get hundreds as well. And it was incredible. I've got the shirt, I've got the scorecard. It's the only thing I have about my cricketing career up in our clubhouse here. And you look through the whole scorecard of that game, and that's the Test match that Shane Warne got that famous 99, and we almost won with 40 minutes to go. We had Gillespie glove down leg side, but the Zimbabwean umpire said not out, and then if that had gone our way, who knows, we could have got out Brett Lee and McGrath with 40 minutes to go to win the Test series against Australia. So and that's it. You can't take that away from anyone once you've performed at a high level. It's there in the record books, and something that you've got to be proud of, and you have to be proud of what you achieve.
Yeah, exactly. You always have that Test 100 on debut in your record, and you always have that shirt which you can keep for the rest of your life. And I find it so interesting, your approach to that game, because it sounds like, yes, although you were a bit nervous, you wanted to take your opportunity and you were excited by it. And that's just a good attitude to have. Where would you say that Test debut ranks in your list of career highlights? You've obviously featured at a World Cup. You've also broken the one-day international record for New Zealand. Where would the Test debut feature in that list?
Hey, if we'd won the Test match, it would have been the ultimate best day, best week of my life. We didn't. It was a draw. It's a huge part of what I feel proud of. But I think when you're young and at that level, and going back to how I wasn't feeling nervous, I was excited, and of course I was apprehensive. But you just want to just test yourself against the best and get out there, and to have success at that level was great. But nothing ever beats, as a team, collectively winning a game. And for New Zealand, we had some amazing games against Australia, more so in the we never bet them in a test match, but one day cricket we had, we sort of topped them over probably 5 or 6 times during my career, and just that feeling in the change room, sitting there taking down the best team in the world, and you're like, yeah, how good's that? That is the ultimate, the best thing I remember from my international career. But also club cricket in England, Ramsbottom playing against some team up in the middle of the Lancashire League, and just seeing someone that's never been able to really score runs, just to hit the winning runs and see them charge off the field with their shirt up over their big bare belly and running through the fence because they can't jump over it, and just being so happy that they've won a game. Those are the moments in my life that stick out, is when I see people just happy.
Definitely. I was just going to say that when we were coming up to this interview, I was watching highlights of you, and it seemed like you were quite a fearless player anyway. Looking at the game sort of 15 years ago, it's not like people were sort of scooping the ball or reverse sweeping as much. And then I see highlights of you, and it's like you're taking it on some of the fastest bowlers in the world. So you must have been quite a fearless player anyway. Yeah. Well, I'm a New Zealander. I was born in New Zealand. My dad was working in radio, and when I was 12, Dad and I moved to Australia. So I had 5 years at high school in Adelaide, and I just remember being at Adelaide Oval every day, and the ground staff would always have a little secret, a little pitch ready for us, and 3 of us would go down and practice every day, and then you'd rub shoulders against the professionals, and just watching the way the attitude of the Australians played, it's just like, man, it's your time. You've got every right to be on this field. You've got every right to take it on. It doesn't matter. It's a level playing field. So I think having that 5 years in Australia of that attitude, and we all know, we all love to beat Australia, and we all love watching Australia. We're sitting in the Ashes with the England team, and it's just the attitude of just like, you've got this, and get out there and you got to be fearless and take it on. It's so true, and that's what I bring to my coaching with kids these days. Is actually, it's not so much, you have to play dead straight and block the ball at your feet and stuff. It's like, man, there's the ball, man. If you want to hit it, man, smack it for 6, smack it for 4. Just get the feeling of hitting the ball hard and mucking around with the bowlers and pissing the fielders off by hitting one there and moving it there, and a game inside a game. So yeah, and get me wrong, when mentally I wasn't great and I was feeling low on myself and I didn't feel like I was going to perform, it's amazing the games I walked into and I didn't perform, and then you'd be tougher on yourself, and then you'd get insular, and then you'd sort of like, oh God, start searching and start asking questions, start asking every coach what's wrong with my technique. And so you sort of, when things are great, they're great, but when things aren't great, I look at my career, and my downfall was definitely my self-esteem. I had an amazing start to my career, but the very next test match I got a first ball duck against Bangladesh. So it's like, well, penthouse to shithouse, and you've got to deal with that as a 22-year-old. And I think this day and age there's a lot more support for young athletes with the mental side of the game, which during my period of time there was not much there. I certainly was, as my career went on, was a victim to poor mental health management. So yeah, it's easy to look back in hindsight. But when I was on fire, I was definitely a pain in the ass to play against.
Well, we're obviously a podcast that has a strong emphasis on the mental side of sport. And I find it so interesting you talking about scoring 100 on Test debut and then shortly after scoring a duck against Bangladesh. And I think that just is indicative of the highs and lows that cricket can take you on, because it's just such a mentally demanding sport. What would you say was the biggest psychological challenge you encountered in cricket?
That's a good question. I think something that you can't be taught until you do it, and that's when you do become, an international athlete and having to deal with the distractions, whether it's sponsorships, it's the fans, it's the money, it's the selfishness of players in a team that are looking after themselves and making sure that their spot is protected and you're not a threat, and that was something to me that was the downfall towards the end of my career with the New Zealand team when I was 27, when I really hit the wall with depression. I thought that New Zealand team was my family, and I gave it everything. And if I was away on tour, if I felt a little bit homesick, I'd people would know that, and I'd say, hey, listen, blah blah blah, and feeling a little bit flat, But it sort of worked against me because, you know, when you're at that level, if you show any weakness, then that can be preyed upon, and it was certainly used against me during a couple of times I was dropped, you know, and certainly after I scored a double hundred in Test cricket, and then the next Test match, Test match after I scored a 90, so I had 3 good Test matches in a row, and then get dropped because my technique wasn't good enough. That was like a really big knife through my heart of like, well, New Zealand's my home. New Zealand's my my family, and I just feel like, you know, my family's just dumped me again. And that was when I went on a big downward spiral. It was just like how I realised that professional sport is actually really cruel.
Cricket as well is so, the success is so quantifiable. Like you were scoring double hundreds, you then scored a 19. That's obviously what everyone would consider success in batting. And then you get dropped. You must be then constantly searching for answers, and that must, you know, add into the mental state that you were in.
Oh man, that was the defining moment of my career in New Zealand. It was just like, wow, I don't like cricket. I don't like the New Zealand team. I don't like the people involved. I completely feel heartbroken that, you know, you've given everything to this team and yet they treat you this way. And, you know, I went home to my countryside little house in the middle of nowhere and literally just cried for days, didn't eat for days, and that's when I first discovered depression. And I didn't leave the home, went to the doctors a couple of weeks later, and just, it affected everything. It affected my private life, it affected friendships. It was the bottoming out of my career. And at that stage it was, I spent a month away from the game, and then my Auckland coach, Mark McDonald, who I hands down is the most inspiring, the most amazing manager in the world, and he was just, hey, you just come back when you're ready, and got me back into that Auckland team. And I remember, there's a one-day game against Wellington, you know, you're playing Lou. I said, yeah, I'll come down. So I drove to Auckland. I was about 40 minutes out of town, and I just remember sitting in the car and just not wanting to get out. And I was like, far out. I can't do this. I can't face going out there, and everyone knows I'm a sad, depressed person. And then I'm not sure if I should say this on air or anything, but a mate of mine who was a neighbour put something in my car the week before, and it was a joint. And it was just sitting on the ground in the car. I was like, oh, yeah, I probably need something like this to help me. So I had a little smoke on this joint, and I laid there and went, man, come on, you've come this way, you've driven down, get out the car. And I got down there and walked into the ground, and the team was already sort of warming up, and I was just embarrassed. I just didn't want to be there. But I just remember this little kid came up to me, goes, hey Lou, yay, I can't wait to watch you bat today. And I was like, okay, cool, all right, that's cool, I better keep on going. And I got to the change room, and the manager was there, and they were all just loved. They said, listen man, just do what you got to do if you want to go out and join the boys. And I just had a big smile on my face. I was just like, oh, I was pretty happy. I don't smoke any drugs, but this was like, I was just like, this is cool. And then just went out there and I dropped 3 high catches and I couldn't hit a ball, and I was just like, but I just didn't care. I was just like, oh, far out. I was just like, oh. And the game started, we batted first, and I top scored with 55 in a 2020 game. And then, you know, went back to the change room and just cried. I was just like, oh my God, this is just too much. And then went home, and then I was like, oh, I can't, just done, I'm done. And then I just don't want to play cricket in this country anymore. That's when the ICL, the Indian Cricket League, popped up, and they said, well, my wife at the time was British, and she said, well, why don't we move to England? And while we're in England, take on the contract in India in the ICL, and that way you've got good financial money come in, and you know, you don't have to worry about playing for New Zealand again. So that was it. The decision was made in a week. We packed up the house and took off to the UK via India for 6 weeks, and that's when the second part of my life completely opened up in the sporting world.
I think even just that, the smoking thing, it just shows the immense pressure that professional sportsmen are under. I'm not going to make it out like you were smoking all the time, but you needed something. You know, the amount of pressure and the mental state that you're in, it clearly shows that it was just way too much. But if we get into you going to the ICL, sort of how did all of this start? Because obviously it's well documented, the situation you got yourself in, and am I right in saying that it just started with a phone call one day when you were in India?
Oh, it was incredible. It was like we're in India, and again, I was still very depressed. I was like struggling with like just with cricket and where I was going, and completely still hurting from the way my career finished with New Zealand, the unknown of where I'm going. India, we're playing in a rebel tournament where it wasn't guaranteed that we were going to get paid. It was just a shambles. It was disorganised. There was no clothes. There was you didn't even know which room you had to stay. You were booked into and that. But it had found its feet, and fair play. The Indians do make things happen, and they love cricket. And India, by hands down, is the most enjoyable place to play cricket in the world. It's fanatical, and then. Like most tours in India, you always get phone calls to your room saying, "Oh, we would like you to, use our gear, or we would like you to do a TV ad, or we would like you to have coffee with you. Please, I'm a big fan." Everyone's your big fan. It's lovely. But yeah, this one particular afternoon, got a call in my hotel room from a guy saying he's got some batting equipment for me. He wants to use for the tournament, and it was ideal timing because walking away from New Zealand and joining the Rebel League, all our sponsors had sort of cut ties with us, so we're all free agents to use any gear we wanted over there. And so I was like, yeah, cool, man, we'll hook up tomorrow. And the next day he called me and he said, yep, come to the hotel room, which is in the same hotel as us, and went up to the room and opened the door and he welcomed me in. And it's happened before on tours where you go in there and they have all the bats and all the gear, and you go around there and you buy a few bats, take them back to New Zealand for your mates, blah, blah, blah. But walking to the room, there was no bats, and you walk in there and, okay, no worries, yeah, all good, he's friendly and welcoming and making me feel good. And then there was his wife, I'm sitting on the end of the bed, and she was friendly, hello, how are you? And poured me a whiskey and, having a good chat and just talking about how great I was and how amazing I was. I'm like, holy shit, I wish you were my wife. This is a sort of ego sort of rubbing conversation I'd like to have all the time. I'm feeling good about myself. This guy's making me feel good. And then we got chatting about the gear, and he's like, well, hey, this is our bats are this. And I started asking about what are your stickers? What colours are they? They said, and where's the gear? And he said, well, what concierge is like in India, it's a bit slow, so the bats are on their way, so just be patient. And we got chatting a bit more, another whiskey, and then after about half an hour, I was like, oh, yeah, listen, it's good to meet you, but I want to see the gear. And he goes, listen, I'll go downstairs and find out where the gear is. And so as he's about to leave the room, I went to the bathroom and he pulled me aside and said, hey, our company's going to look after you forever and ever. She isn't my wife. She's a present for you. You can sleep with her, and she's our present. 2 minutes later, he comes back into the room and he's like, the gear's sort of stuck downstairs, but let's just have a whiskey and talk a bit more and blah blah blah. And then he sort of got straight into it. He said, listen, right, this is how the business works. And he pulled out $15,000 US cash and just sat it on the table and said, right, that's our down payment, and we deal in cash. And what we do is we bet inside games. And it was like, oh shit, that's when the penny dropped. That I've just been completely honey trapped into a bookie. And because we had education, I'd probably sat through about 12 sort of seminars during my cricketing career sort of warning us of this, but it was just like, it's never going to happen to me, no chance it's going to do. And then it was like, oh shit, I'm in trouble here. He's probably got cameras around the room recording what's just happened, and he's giving me $15,000 cash and explaining how the betting system works and all that. And I was like, I've got to get out of this room. And I said, listen, okay, cool, I'll think about it. I'll go downstairs and I'll have a think about it. And I'll come back in whatever it was, 10 minutes, but I just need some time to think about this. And so I left the room, went straight down to my manager room and said, hey, this is what's happened. And I explained it to her. So she said, leave it with me, we'll get security up to that room. What happens to the cash? I said, well, he wouldn't let me leave the room with the money, so I put it into the safe. And she said, I'll just write the code on the piece of paper and we'll take care of it and stuff. And that was the last I heard of it. I was like, cool. So I went back down to my floor and that's when it all sort of happened.
It's both a fascinating and shocking story there, Lou, and it's really interesting hearing about the different techniques that match fixers use to try and lure you into their world. And you obviously did well to turn down that initial offer, but obviously it's very well documented that shortly after you did get involved in match fixing, following a separate approach from different fixers. Can you tell us a little bit more about that time?
Yeah, it's a pretty something that I'll never unfortunately forget, and it was something that completely I'll have to live with the way I disrespected the game and how I got involved with it. Certainly match fixing in England, that's the home of cricket, playing for Lancashire and Sussex, that's how dare you, there's no one has the right to do what I did in those games when there's fans and there's sponsors and there's fellow players giving it 100% and one of the best out of the sport. That's something that I'll never ever be proud of. But hey, it happened, and what can I do now to make sure that not another young player can be groomed or manipulated into a match fixing? And that's my purpose in life. And I like to think that I'll have an impact, which it seems to be happening here in New Zealand. The feedback, not just within cricket, but hockey, soccer, rugby, the Olympic Committee, the people I talk to, New Zealand police, business people, the people I speak to do get it. And I think I'm making an impact. So hopefully I'm winning a few brownie points in the cricketing world.
It is great that you are helping people now and you're turning your situation into a positive, and we're really grateful for you for opening up about that sensitive time in your life, because hopefully someone listening to this might be helped by it, and if they ever find themselves in a situation similar, then they're going to not have to go through the same thing. But I find it really interesting how you talk about it as if it was sort of grooming, and it is, and you can sort of see how somebody, particularly someone like yourself who might have been in a vulnerable state, you were depressed at the time, you can see why someone like that could be exploited by these corrupt people, these match fixers. So I completely appreciate how that someone could be manipulated like you were. But what I'd like to know as well is what sort of things were they actually asking you to do?
Oh, so it was pretty straightforward. But as an opening batsman, I was just asked to score, between 10 and 15 runs off 20 balls and get out. That's it. Job done. $50,000 in some random account in Dubai. All yours, no worries. Piece of cake. Keep it simple. That's how it all started. It started very simply, and then as I got deeper involved with match fixing and you started dealing with other bookies, it became more technical, where say in a 2020 match it was broken into 5 over sessions. So the first 5 overs, the second 5 overs, the third 5, and then the last 5. So at the end of the second session, which is overs 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they would choose 3 over blocks during that session. So for example, overs 8, 9, 10, they would only want to see 12 to 14 runs scored. So off 3 overs, 12 to 14 runs isn't much in a 2020 match. So it's about controlling the runs and being on strike and playing and missing and hitting the fielders, or you know what I mean, and then getting out. And then that was probably the hardest part to perform, was to control a game when you're on the take but the other person isn't, and you have to sort of, like you said, try to hog the strike or blah blah blah. So you can sort of see why they try and groom you into or threaten you to get other players, because the more players involved in a team, the more they can guarantee that the betting is controlled. And we're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars bet on certain sessions of the game, and it's massive money. It's huge money.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess with cricket, unless you're at the top of your game, you're not going to be making millions, particularly 15 years ago when there was less money in the game. So it must be tempting for a young cricketer who's not making that much money to get involved in match fixing.
Oh, the other avenue where I tell, especially with so many 2020 leagues around the world these days in so many countries, is that you're a great player, there and thereabouts. The auction comes up and you go for $100,000 and you go, oh yeah, it's okay, $100,000, blah blah blah. But I'm employed. And then a guy who's had a crap season all of a sudden gets $2 million, and there you go. The tournament starts, and you're scoring all the runs. You got 50, 100, blah blah blah. You're winning the games for your 2020 team, absolutely on fire. Everybody's loving you, and you're sitting in change rooms on $100,000, and the guy next to you who's on $2 million has got a duck, a 1, getting all the kudos, getting the big name, you know. And so you had this sort of sometimes this changing room jealousy of like, well, you know, he's on way more money than me, and I'm not getting much, but I'm performing. And that's also another vulnerable part of young sportsmen, is they get a little bit bitter, get a little bit jealous of what other people are on. So they're like, well, how do I find more ways of making money? And that's also been an avenue for players to get involved. And certainly, you know, again, if a powerful person involved in that world sees someone not get much money at an auction, they will sort of keep a closer eye on them and whether they'll be willing to be approached at some point. So that's another avenue that we're trying to educate the boys about as well, and girls, that, you know, hey, money's money, but hey, listen, you know, don't let money rule your professional career. Otherwise, you know, you're going to run the risk of getting yourself in trouble.
So it's almost, as you're describing, it's fun. It's obviously to do with the financial side of things, but there's also other things involved as well, aren't there? Like playing on the ego, and if you've, like you said, been in a changing room where you feel a bit of jealousy of another teammate, they play on that ego, and then ultimately it leads you to get involved with a world that is ultimately inescapable.
Yeah, it is. Once you're there, you're always living with a noose around your neck, waiting to be bribed. And you know, there's always subtle conversations about your children and where you lived and things that they knew about you that you didn't even know. And you know, when you dealt with these people, when you picked up the cash and when you did the money exchange and the I think they call it, is it the halal system, halal system or something, where, you know, the serial number on a banknote, you know, you read that, or you text it to the guy, the bookie, and that's your ID into the laundry shop to then pick up your bag of cash. You hand that money over, and that proves that who you are and stuff, and you get the bag of cash. And it's insane, and the people that you come across, you feel very threatened that, hey, these guys are, you know, gangsters, man. If they want you perhaps gone, or you're a threat or whatever, then, you know, they always let you know that they know more about you than they think. And it's it was time to get out of the game. It was time to retire. So I retired at whatever age, 34, 35. I was like, oh, I've got to go. This is just a shambles. You know, look at who I've become. I've become a father of 2 kids, and I'm trying to teach them honesty and respect. And look at me, I'm not even honest. I'm not respectful. You know, and you know, again, you know, that took me down a second bad spiral of depression. You know, my marriage breaking up, and pretty much living in a van, cruising around the UK. It was not a proud moment, and that was 2011. And what are we now? 2020. It's probably taken 9 years to rebuild myself mentally and the inner peace and the happiness. And you know, so finally at 42, I'm at peace with the world, and I'm feeling happy. So it's been, you know, that's a big chunk of your life taken out with some pretty bad decisions. And you know, I'm glad I've got through it, because there was times when I didn't think I'd get through it.
Yeah, it's great to hear that you've turned it around and you're in a much better place now. It's really great to hear. And just picking up on the point you're talking about, one of the difficult things was the fact that you were trying to teach your kids about honesty. It must have been quite mentally draining when you were going through all that, because you're having to put up a front and acting in front of not only your family but your teammates as well. You're pretending that you wanted to do well, when in reality you were trying to get yourself out on purpose and perform badly on purpose. That must have put quite a mental strain on you.
Oh, it's ridiculous. You know, I always remember one game for Sussex, and you know, by this stage I didn't want to be involved, but financially I was in a lot of after separation and all that. I was in a bit of financial trouble in the UK, and I was like, it almost became desperation to perform. But then I was playing against my old club Lancashire in a 2020 match, and if we'd won this, we would have gone through to the semi-final. And I was almost forced to, like, you have to fix this game because you've stuffed up the last 2, and you owe us, Lou. And then as I walked out to bat, you know, I had the pink grip was the code for the bookies back in India who were watching on TV. So if they saw me with a pink grip, that you guaranteed that I was going to fix that game. And so I just remember walking out halfway down the stairs, and you know, I just see the boys just in the change room just so passionate to win, and I wanted to win. I was like, no, this is fucking wrong. You know, why am I? What? This is just a mess. But there I am walking out with my pink grip, which meant, well, it is what it is. I can't turn back now. You know, I'm just going to have to close my eyes and just do what I've got to do to get the money and sort my private life, financial life out, and just worry about the consequences afterwards. And just as we're walking out, the little bit of rain started falling down, and it's just the umpire stopped and said, no, cover's on, go back to the change room. And went back to the change room and just sat there, and I was just like, no, I don't want to do this. So I changed my bats, and the rain stopped, and I walked out to bat with my white handle, which meaning that there's no fix on today, and I knew there's going to be consequences. I thought, if they come after me, if they do what they do, if they want to knock me off, or sort of threaten me again, then I'll accept that. But you know what? I want to win. I want to take the Sussex boys to the semi-final, and I want to beat Lancashire. And I felt good. I was like, phew. So I'm walking out to bat, take my centre guard. Mahmood was bowling. Saj was a good mate, and we had some good battles in the nets when I was at Lancashire, but I always thought I had one up on him. He was a class bowler, and I was just like, I'm going to smash him around the park. And he comes steaming in. I'm feeling good. I can see the ball. And it's an absolute corker of a ball. It's just pitched on middle and just nipped away and just clipped the outside edge of my bat and got caught behind for a duck. And I just remember walking off the field just feeling like so lonely and just broken. It was like, wow, there I am just trying to win a game and I get a first ball duck. And so not only have I underperformed, I've also showed the bookies in India that I didn't want to fix and I was going out there to win. And so it was like a double whammy. And that's the mess you get yourself in. And by that stage, it was towards the end of the season, I think, and then I pulled the pin, and that was me. I left England and just sort of went back to New Zealand for a bit in Hong Kong, and just trying to scratch through, really. I was pretty much living day to day, but there was a lot of substance abuse. There was a lot of depression and trying to be a father, and 3 years after that, I was still chasing my tail, and until I got to the point where I could properly go home and talk to my family and say, well, this is what's going on. And then I went to the Heath Mills, who's the head of the New Zealand Cricket Players Association, and I sort of said, mate, we need to go have a coffee, and that coffee turned into a lunch and dinner date, and we sort of spent 7 hours talking about the whole story of how it all started and where we're at, and also what we're going to do to sort this out. And that was the turning point of my career and coming forward. And there was questions being asked about me, and the anti-corruption were sort of pressuring me with sort of interviews and stuff. But at the end of the day, I was retired, and I could have kept quiet, and I did keep quiet because that was it. I'm done. See you later. There's rumours, sure, no worries, but I'm done. But it was that moment of being back home, safe with my family, and with New Zealand Cricket Players Association, that sort of really helped me come forward and help clean the game up. It was an interesting time, especially when you come forward and to help the game, and the ECB had every right to hit me with the biggest ban, and having 11 life bans was pretty full on. But like I said, I accepted it and said, absolutely, I don't deserve to ever be involved with the game again. And and then what's that? 8 years later, it's like I said, it's lovely to be able to use what I've gone through to build my inner happiness, my self-esteem, my confidence, and turning what's been a really disastrous 10 years of my life into an amazing positive for growth in sport and certainly cricket.
Yeah, and it seems like a theme of your current life is giving back to the community, and you're helping the younger generation with your coaching, but also you're helping educate players around the world of corruption and match fixing. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing in that field?
Yeah, no worries. But it started off with all the professional teams in New Zealand. So there's the 5 provincial teams, and then the 5 women's teams. So it was great. Like it was for someone that never ever liked standing in front of a group talking to anybody, was probably my biggest challenge, I reckon, was to get that confidence and understanding of how to structure a chat and a presentation. And Henry Moore, who's involved with the Players Association here, him and I sat down and we did a PowerPoint presentation, and it was just that first one. I just had to get that first one out the way. And it was talking to my old provincial team, Auckland. who I also fixed for while playing the Champions League in India and South Africa. So to face my old foe was a pretty big thing, but it had to be done. I knew that the best impact that I can have on the game of cricket going forward, because look what happened to me. I sat through 12 seminars during my career and I still got involved because it came from someone just reading out of a manual. Whereas my impact is that I'm educating and telling these athletes first-hand experience that, hey, this is me, this is Lou, this is someone that, you know, did okay at times for New Zealand cricket, but man, I made an absolute mess of myself, and this is how it happened. This is something that you've got to be careful of, and it's your right to protect the game and the future. And so it started with the players, and then New Zealand hockey, you know, because they were playing a World Cup in India, and you know, they wanted to use, you know, my story as well to help educate those sort of players. And then New Zealand soccer, and then all of a sudden New Zealand police got in touch, and they do a anti-fraud, corruption sort of money laundering seminar every couple of years in Wellington, and they used my story and my situation to help educate like real estate agents, lawyers, politicians about the grooming and the honey traps and how money is laundered and cleaned and all that sort of stuff. So it's been a pretty awesome impact to rather just be sitting at home, just building, surfing, and not giving back. I'm all about giving. When my cricketing players, you know, when I was playing cricket professionally in any team, I just loved giving to the team. I was the one clapping, I was the one running down to fine leg to get the guy's hat to give to the umpire, and I'm always been a firm believer that a teammate's got to give to get back. And although I didn't get a lot back sometimes in my career, it's who I was, and so it feels right to be giving back to all sports, because we are seeing a lot more, not first grade cricket, not second grade soccer, not third grade rugby, but fourth grade in all sports are now being streamed online. Even club games in England I see are streamed online. And when things are live online, that's the other angle I educate players, is that if it's live online, there's a chance that can be bet on anywhere in the world, and that is an easy approach for a bookie to come knocking on your door and say, hey, you know, Eschalt cricket team, you know, I'll give you guys £2,000 if you guys don't win the Wednesday night game against this team. And the boys go, oh, sweet as, you know. So that's what I'm trying to explain to amateurs. Amateurs can be a target for bookies. So it's the whole world's changing with the access of internet and live sports.
It is something I hadn't considered before, you know, that idea that everything's now being increasingly streamed and there's more matches being shown, and that's something that I guess even as more of these 2020 leagues and T10 leagues pop up around the world, there's just more matches and more things to be betting on. Do you think as more of these franchises pop up, it's going to be more of a problem, or do you think because they're becoming more developed leagues now, there's more governance and more regulation with it?
Well, the ICC and a lot of ICC do all they can. They do a brilliant job in policing the game and protecting the game. You know, they're forever trying to educate players, and the only thing we can do, and that's where I get excited about, is through one-on-one education, and that's all we can do to players, is to bring awareness to them how it works, bring awareness to the traps, and if they don't feel good about anything, have an avenue, and a safe avenue where they can report it, because they do put a lot of pressure on players. They say if you've been approached and you don't report it, you could be subject to a 2-year ban. You know, but if you've got your best mate that's come to you and stuff, you know, do you really want to dob your mate in, or be known as a narc? You know, it's a lot of pressure, intense pressure for any athlete to be put under. But you know, we just got to bite the bullet and think about, you know, the good of the game, and you know, and fingers crossed that players will maintain and continue to report all activities. And as we all know, as my career, you know, sort of got into that world, it's all about sort of recruiting and asking other players to get involved. And as soon as you do that, you're putting a friend in a compromising position. And two friends who I did put in compromising position in the English Cricket League did the right thing, and they reported me. But the other thing as well, when you look at it, especially in the poorer countries, when you've got a businessman sponsoring a young cricketer, a 10-year-old, right through to who's 18, buying bats, getting into the games and stuff, and then thinking it's all lovely or great. They've had 8 years of looking after this young player. They get on TV playing a game. They're like, well, hey, I've looked after you for 8 years. You sort of, you owe it to our business to match fix now. So grooming can start well before they become even professional. So there's a lot to handle in that sort of professional sport.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's the big thing, is like these players are being groomed, and sometimes they won't even know it's happening, and they will be drowned in gifts, and the person will befriend them, pretend they're their friend, when actually they're just trying to use them. And I guess that's part of your work, is trying to help these players identify what the telltale signs are when they're being groomed and exploited. Yeah. So what would you say that young cricketers should look out for when someone might be trying to exploit them?
Hey, you've just got to have trusted people around you. I think it comes from your family life. You've got to have a good relationship with your parents. And mine growing up was a little bit strange. I sort of had to grow up on my own, and I'd bounce from sort of groups, and I moved a lot. So I never really had a core, strong group of support around me, and so I didn't really have that person overlooking my shoulders to make sure I was making good decisions. You've got to have a very important mentor. You've got to have someone that's going to help you with your game. You've got to have, a strong relationship with your family or your partner, fellow cricketers in your team. You've just got to, you can't live life on edge, being, fearful that everybody's wrong. We all want to live life thinking that everybody's good. And so you've got to think good, but you've also got to keep one eye open for the dark side of the world. And, just, hey, if you're going out there to win, then you've got no problems. You just got to keep that mentality that when you finally hang up your boots in your career, that you can be satisfied that all those hard training sessions you've done, running in the rain, getting bruised on the head, getting thrashed, having the most amazing wins, scoring 100, that you can hang your boots up and look back and go, yep, I'm proud. I'm proud, and I'm going to maintain that sort of proudness for the rest of my life, because that's all we've got in life is to feel good and to be happy.
And that pride in the game and that joy from the game is something you're now carrying through with Windy Ridge Cricket Club, which we obviously follow on Instagram, and it just seems to be highlighting all the best bits about cricket. It's people, drinking in the sun, having fun, and it's getting so many kids into the game. So do you want to maybe just speak about that a bit more and the work you're doing with that, because we're big fans of it?
Oh, it's just come to life. I'm really lucky. I've got a couple of acres of land in Raglan, and the top paddock, I was getting sick of mowing it. So I thought, right, what's the best thing to do to stop mowing? Well, build a cricket pitch and a pavilion, so it's like less grass to mow. And lockdown came at the right time. Being a builder, I ran around for 2 days just getting every bit of material I could find. And I'm a bit of a bespoke builder. I love building old and new together. And stuff had been sitting in my garage for the last 15 years of all the caps all the teams I've played for around the world, all the bats from significant games, signed bats from Don Bradman and Brian Lara and Alan Border, and the list goes on. And it was like, what? I like cricket. I really want to get back into it. And you know what? I'm banned from being employed. I'm banned from coaching. I'm banned from going to watch a game under the umbrella of the ICC. So I'm just going to build it at home. And I think I watched that movie Field of Dreams during lockdown. I was like, yeah, if you build it, they'll come. And then it made me feel alive. I was always the go-to guy in the New Zealand team to go to the school visits and hang out and sign all the autographs, and always giving at the end of the game giving something away, because it was the kids that will make a healthy future for all sports. So when Ridge sort of grew from like, well, what, I need a distraction to give back, because I just want to be involved again, and then it started, man. It started with the clubhouse, and it was amazing, like getting all the hats up of all the teams I'd played for, from the first one when I was 4 years old, which ironically was an Australian cap that Dad gave me, right through to my last cap, which was a Bangladesh team. And and just bringing back all the memories and putting photos online, and all of a sudden all the clubs were starting to talk to each other and going, oh yeah, Lou played here and Lou was an idiot and Lou did that, and just bringing the community of cricket together. And then the excitement of like Raglan, which is a surf town, nobody plays cricket here, and all of a sudden you had the farmers and the surfers, they're all like, oh, can we come up and hit some balls? And you can see on our Instagram account there's some pretty funny shots being played. And then last week we hosted our first Christmas do, and it was amazing. We had 35 doctors and nurses here who've been on the firing line for the last 8 months, just letting their hair down, and people that hadn't played cricket before were just loving it, getting all the pads on and helmets and boxes and stuff, and it's cool, man. And part of my madness is to keep doing what I'm doing, but also I will be approaching the ECB at some point and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. I want to be respectful. I accept my punishment, but I think I've got a part to play. And if there's going to be any leniency in the future, and possibly sort of downgrading the 11 life bans, will is something I'm going to try for, absolutely. But for now, it's just going to keep things simple and keep things fun, and keep working towards just enjoying life. Because man, people try and take it out of you, man. People try and crush you, but no, I'm not going to let that happen again.
No, we've been following it for a couple of weeks now, and I think it's so good. And like you said, Raglan could be a surfing town, but literally all you need is a bloke like you who's doing good in the community, and then just inspires one kid, and they could go on to whatever level they play. If they're playing cricket for life and having that in their life, it's just such an admirable thing to be doing. So fair play to you, mate. We think it's quality.
Well, it's confidence in life. There's one young boy that I was coached who was too shy to do anything, and he'd always like be, no, I'm not going to do that, no. And he's been here 6 weeks now, and his mum called me last week and said he now wants to take up surfing. He's now skateboarding really well. He's now conversing with the family. You can see this little kid's confidence in life has grown because of just teaching really simple, basic skills of throwing the ball at the target and hitting it and making him feel awesome, and that's what our responsibility is, not only as a parent but as a role model, as an adult for kids, is we've got to get the next generation confident and happy and being good people, showing manners, showing respect, cleaning up, and being dedicated, and having discipline and dealing with failure as well. And but ultimately it's about keeping these kids up and happy and moving forward and confident.
Yeah, and I think the pandemic in general has given sports people like yourself an opportunity to do a lot of positive things for the community, and it is great what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And it's been great. It must have been great to see the community supporting it in such great numbers, and even the picture we were talking about earlier of all those kids wearing your old shirts. It must be great. Considering the lows you've been through that we've discussed already, it must be great to be where you are now and see that you're still a hero to all these kids, and you still have a positive influence on all of them.
Yeah. Oh, it's trust me, it's taken a long time to believe that that confidence in myself, because you can be your own hardest sort of judge, and if you stuff up, you feel like you've stuffed up in life. And as a mental challenge, when you do stuff up, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of sort of reprogramming your train of thought to push that negative thought out of your mind, and reinforcing it with a positive affirmation that hey, yeah, you've made a mess of certain aspects of your life, but come on, man, you're a good person and you've got a lot to give. And that photo when it got sent through to me with all those kids wearing all my shirts at the first day of the test match was just so cool. And the response I've had from ex-players and ex-cricketers from around the world just saying, we're behind you, Lou. We hope to see you back involved with cricket in the future. And I like to think I've at a certain point that it will fall into play, and hopefully the ban may be reduced. But if it doesn't matter as well, because I'll always find a way to keep bringing good things to the sport.
You say about friends and former cricketers who have supported your work. One of those is Heath Mills, the head of the New Zealand Cricket Players Association. It must be good seeing people like him supporting your work with Windy Ridge, and it must also give you hope and optimism that your positive work for the community will be recognised and perhaps help your ban be overturned.
Well, hey, listen, you guys live in England, so if you can visit the ECB tomorrow and sort of maybe play on the interview, and you can be my advocates, you can stand out and protest on the front saying bring back Lou, and there you go. You can sort of you can petition it for me. There you go. No, I think it's just got to naturally find its own sort of way, you know, and certainly building Windy Ridge Cricket Club, it's just sort of brought such a positive vibe in my heart, and it feels great, and whatever happens from here forward, it's all a bonus. But the main thing is kids are playing cricket.
What would you want to happen in the next 5 years or so? You're saying you're on this incredibly positive journey. If in an ideal world, how would that pan out for you?
Oh, that's a good question. The biggest shift I want to see in Lou Vincent's life for the next 5 years is that there's going to obviously be less corruption in sport, which we're seeing, and maintaining my fitness and staying a healthy mind. I think once you've been to the bottom and you finally get back to the top again, you've got to really cherish your mental health, and it's the most important thing that we can, because if we love ourselves, then we'll love lots of other things in life. If we're chasing for loving ourselves through other people, then we're always going to be chasing our tail.
Yeah, and it is great to hear those goals, and you're using your own personal situations to help others, which is great to hear. One final question for me, which I'm interested in, is because you've been through this journey where you've been at the lowest of lows, but you're now in a very good place mentally. What would you say to other athletes who might be struggling mentally? What advice would you give? We're obviously a podcast which is trying to promote positive discussions around mental health. What advice would you give to people who might be struggling?
For people that are struggling mentally, I think you've got to take some time out. You've got to eliminate distractions, because we can get in a cycle of like always being in demand. You know, people contact us all the time on our phone, work demand, training demand and stuff. I think you've got to, at some point, you've got to take some time out to really get to know yourself. You've got to look internally at like what makes you tick, what makes you like yourself, what you want to achieve, and then learning the programming of the mind to make sure that you can sort of hang onto your focus, because I see it too much. I see people, especially athletes, getting pulled left, right and centre, and the pressure and the demand. Eliminate distractions, bring it back in closer, shut off, regroup, because if you come back a better, stronger person, you will perform better, and you'll become a better athlete. And if that doesn't work, come to New Zealand, to Raglan, Windy Ridge, and I'll take you out fishing, surfing, and get the bowling machine on, and come and have some fun. That's the best therapy.
Sounds amazing.
Thanks so much for chatting to us like that, mate, honestly.
Oh, pleasure, guys, and keep up the good work. I really love what you guys are doing, and look forward to hearing the next series. Apart from hearing my voice, I don't want to hear this one.
No, it's honestly, we're so grateful for you giving up your time there.
Hey, I've done 2 interviews in the last 7 years, so this is the third one. I've kept a pretty low profile, and I know you guys contacted me quite a while ago to do it, but it wasn't quite the right time. I wanted to do the local piece here in Raglan first, and then that sort of grew into the national New Zealand Herald piece, and had great support from the Black Caps coach straight after that article, and now you guys, and now I can just sit back and sort of get on with it and not have to push too much. So thank you for encouraging me to be involved.
Great to meet you, although it was virtual, and just hearing from you is amazing, and we'll be sure to show the ECB this hour we've had with you.
Okay, guys. Hey, all the best, guys. Keep in touch, eh?
Cheers, Lou. That was both a fascinating and shocking account into the world of match fixing. And I was so interested to hear all the intricate details, like how he changed his bat handle to a pink grip on days where he'd throw a match. And for me, I was particularly gripped by what drew him into fixing in the first place, because from the outside, you'd look at Lou Vincent and think, right, he's an international sportsman, one of the best cricketers in the world, playing for New Zealand and making money. Why would someone like that need to match fix? And while it doesn't excuse his actions, when you dissect Lou's story further, you can see that his vulnerability and mental state at the time were major reasons behind why he did what he did. And what he did was terrible, and he completely disrespected the game. But he acknowledges that now and is bringing a lot of positivity to the sport. He's educating young athletes about the dangers of match fixing, and his work at Windy Ridge is also bringing a lot of happiness to the community. I hope you enjoyed that episode and hearing about Lou's story, and hopefully this interview can provide a deterrent to potential match fixers and encourage athletes to continue reporting approaches.
The details of it all, the pink grips, the trips to Birmingham warehouses, the threats he was receiving in different hotel rooms, it just reveals the true nature of match fixing and shows that side of sport to be a world that is far from having any glamour at all. I think over the course of that hour it became clear that 2021 Lou Vincent is so far from that guy who got roped into it all however many years ago, and that is just really positive. Fair play to Lou also, because I think with a lot of people it may have been difficult to reflect on such a bad period of their life like that, but Lou just seems so aware that he was in such a different mental space at that point in his life, and ultimately he was and is a good guy, but he was one that was vulnerable and one that was exploited. He did what he did, but now he's so happy and he's doing the best thing he can, which is using his experience for good, and you can't help but feel inspired and in admiration of someone like that. To those who have listened, if you do have any feedback, we'd really love to hear it. So feel free to send us a message on Instagram @GivingTheGameAway or leave a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.